Crash Course Live is presented by
Smash It Demolition Derbies, who host Bash for Cash, Blizzard Bash, and Capital City Carnage. Online at smashitderby.com. And Stirring Dirt Racing, host of Maymania's team show at the Golden Spike Arena in Ogden, Utah. Online at stirringdirtracing.com.
Reckless Abandon Derby Apparel and Derby Inc. Magazine. This is the Crash Course Demolition Derby podcast, recorded live at the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York. And now your host, Chris Marquardt.
Good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this edition of the Crash Course Demolition Derby podcast, episode 394 on deck. Thanks so much for joining us and tuning in. Hopefully this is going to be a good one. We went back into a little bit of the old school mentality to prepare for this one. The U102 class is starting to make a comeback up in Ontario. We've been talking to Zack McCormack about that. If you remember right, way back when, it was Christy King at that point, was doing some writing for Derby Inc. magazine and introduced us to the idea that a Lumina might not necessarily be a compact. The W bodies were running with the full-size cars up there at that point when Impact was busy. That was the first exposure that we had to cars running in different classes depending on where you were regionally. Did a little bit of background to find out why that was, and we're going to be diving into that and what Zack McCormack has been working on with Zack's Workshop, the huge following that he's got with that organization up there in Ontario. So good afternoon, good evening again. Welcome to this one. Brian not feeling so hot, so he's not going to be with us here this evening. Keep the comments coming and follow along in the live chat. Tell us what we're doing right and what we might be doing wrong. Happy birthday out to Casey Smith. I saw some pictures of some of the cars that are getting ready to go for the Smith Metalworks Expo that's coming up here, the second weekend of April, April 8th and 9th. We'll be telling you a little bit more about that as we get deeper into the show. Happy birthday to him again. That was fun to see that he's celebrating one more trip around the sun. So here we are. We got Zack McCormack joining us here without any further delay. Looks like everything is up and running where we need it to be for the show tonight, and we'll catch up with Zack here. Zack is waiting in the wings. As you can hear, he's got the Facebook notifications going, and hopefully you get a lot of those after we wrap up tonight. It's really interesting to see this class coming back.
Well, thank you. I kind of excited to be on here. Yep.
So the last couple of years, the W bodies have been sort of moving out of the full size ranks and down into more of a vertical North American alignment, where the W body and the Camry are running with the compact side of things under the Impact rules. But generally speaking, Ontario, prior to what Christy and Devin Germain have been doing up there with Impact, those cars were running on the full-size side of things, and there was a wheelbase rule that didn't allow those cars to run among the compacts, which was something a little bit surprising to us because out here the W body was almost the gold standard in terms of compacts. So talking a little bit with Jeffy at the Fab Farm and stuff, the rule started coming with, as typically is, the frustrations of Demolition Derby drivers who's got a rusty car or can't find a clean something or other, that car is actually a mid-size. And some of the origins of this were tied back to rental cars. Are you familiar with any of that history of how the mid-size and micro and compact / full-size identifications came to be?
Not up here. I know that the W bodies were running full size, but I don't know how they all got separated out due to the rental car stuff.
It was how the cars were classified, and of course, every demolition driver in the inspection line becomes an expert litigator and has a litany of supporting documentation for them, People's Exhibit A, B, and C, as to reasons why that their argument is right. So one of the potential origin stories, which of course we know Demolition Derby's got origin stories from all over the place. One of the potential origin stories is that, well, that's actually mid-size if you look at it here, so it shouldn't be running with a compact. So it was kind of neat to see that origin or that version of the origin, but at the same time, as tough as it is to find cars, as tough it is to find good cars, by changing things up and limiting a class to the micro compacts, 3 and 4 cylinder engines and under 102.5-inch wheelbase, it makes a bunch of other cars viable, and it also brings back some cars that were good at Demolition Derbies, but you didn't really see anymore. The first one I was talking with Chris Hansen when he reached out about this, the one that jumped off the page at me was the Escort. The Escort's back in play.
Yeah, Yeah, the Ford Escort's back, but honestly, up here in Ontario, there's not a whole lot of Ford Escorts left. We suffer from a lot of rust up here. Even our Camrys, to buy a Camry with a rear subframe that's in good shape is pretty hard to come by these days.
That's the story of anybody that lives in the Rust Belt, though. I think that a lot of those good cars that were popular when the compacts started having their own say, they got gobbled up and wadded up quick, and probably a lot of those got fed to crushers after, even though they probably had some more runs left in them.
Yeah, I believe that's true, but I think up here in Canada, because of our rules, that a lot of the cars that we run, I think we're ahead of a lot of the other places just because of the fact the cars don't last. Like, I know people up here that are Derby in 2012, 2014, 2015 cars. Like last year, I did a 2013 Honda Civic just because of the fact that it wasn't good enough to go back on the road, and it only had about 160,000 kilometers, which is probably about 110,000 miles.
That motor was just getting broke in and needed its first oil change.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, it's definitely not around anymore.
So this is all leading around a standalone 102.5-inch wheelbase show. Mom's Motorsports is putting this together, and forgive me if I'm pronouncing this wrong. Caledon, Ontario, on June 11th.
Yeah.
So this is.
I'm super happy about it, and I wanted this. The cars are getting super expensive. Scrap up here is almost at $450 a ton. So pretty much any car is almost unbelievably hard to buy. I took a Toyota Camry over the scales the other day, and it was $775 for just a Toyota Camry with no suspension over the scales. And that's not including like the cat or the battery or the rims. So to buy a car is getting to be unbelievably expensive. Like Crown Vics up here with no motors and flaky frames are selling for $1,200. And for that's like a 2003.
That's probably something that you could probably get some mileage out of it at the Derby track one way or the other, even if it's a little flaky.
Yes, but the problem is up here, our stock class, which 90% of our cars go to stock class, you can't change the aluminum spindles, you can't change the motor mounts, you can't get rid of the bumper shocks, you can't change the rear end, and it kind of really limits. If you're spending $1,200-$1,300 on a full-frame car, and that's a cheap one, you can still only get one run out of it, and most of the time you just break your rear axle, and most of these Crown Vics will go through 2 to 5 rear axles in its lifetime.
Right. And then you're fighting the value at the crusher. That's interesting. I don't know if anybody around here that I can say is paying that much money for an 03 by itself. And then you're limited in what you can do to it. That makes it challenging, sure. So
at the Mums Motorsports, we have actually taken in the Impact Christine Devon Germain's mini rules because honestly, a lot of the promoters here in Ontario are actually going to the rules, so I think it's going to be able to make one car run at one show, will be able to run the next show the next weekend, so that way the one car can get more life out of it, and you don't have to cut it apart, because up until this year, every promoter had different rules. So for me, before COVID, I was trying to run 25 to 30 shows a year, and one weekend I'd have to have 3 different cars built to go to 3 different shows. And it's kind of difficult. So I'm trying to come together with a lot of the other promoters and allow cars to run multiple shows without cutting.
Right, and you'd said that there was some conversations, just out of a show of respect, to try and get that aligned among promoters so you don't have to do that.
Exactly. Christine Devon actually have reached out to a lot of the other promoters, and I thought I'd follow suit. So I messaged them personally and asked them if it's okay if I use them, and they said we would love it. We'd love it so that the promoters can have more shows that run together. So I'd like to get on that bandwagon. But only our mini rules are going to be following them. Our full-size rules and our trucks and vans are going to be running our rules, because around us, I believe that the mini cars is an entry point. So anybody that buys a car can get in a mini, run it with a stock bumper, and still be competitive. But with the Germain's rules, you're allowed limited cage, no gas tank protector, and any bumper you want. So that you can build a little bit, but you can also go in with a stock car and still be kind of competitive.
Sure.
The full size rules. I allow any motor, any rear end, as long as it's a 5-bolt rear end, any transmission, just no driveline protectors, and I allow good cage in it. So, but at my rules, if you build a W body to run mini, then you can't have a gas tank protector. But if you build the W body to run full size, you can run the gas tank protector just to try to keep it safe.
How many shows have you been involved with in terms of the promotion side, where you're writing the rules and getting things up and running? This Mom's Motorsports program, is that the first adventure?
No, Mom's Motorsports, we started off doing mud bogs, and then we went to endurance races, and then from that, we've been doing derbies now for about 4 years, excluding COVID, because it was horrible up here. Our government does not like it, but we've done 2 shows every year, and I volunteer my time at other shows and just help the local fair board keep the shows going. So we do 2 shows a year. We've been asked to do others, but unfortunately, the group of friends that I'm with is only interested in doing the 2 that we have. Well,
sometimes less is more.
You know, I really want to give back to the drivers. Basically, every penny I make off YouTube, I try to get back to the drivers. In past years, I've actually sponsored individuals that have come to me and submitted videos, and the people on the internet have picked them. I used to do Hit of the Year. That cost me a lot of money just because of the shipping. For me to ship a shifter to the U.S. is almost $100 by the time I ship it there. It's pretty expensive because of our duties and stuff, but every penny I make off YouTube, I like to give back to the drivers, and that's why I am actually putting the $1,000 for this micro class, and I'd like to see it come a thing, because these cars that are going to be in the micro class are cars that are not competitive. They are sort of competitive up here. Like Toyota Corollas do pretty good up here in small, muddy tracks, but I've never seen a Hyundai Accent do any good. One of my buddies actually ran a 2012 Ford Fiesta, and it was actually really strong. I believe he got DQ'd because the driver door skin fell off, because it was a bone stock car, but these cars are competitive cars.
So let's dive into that a little bit. You know, we were talking initially that there could be a 103, and then we talked it could be 102, but finding the sweet spot, 102.5, it allowed some other cars to come in to sort of open the playing field. And when you're talking about the cars that are a bit more obscure in terms of what Demolition Derby offers, it kind of jumps off the page and reminds me of what Jason Sauer's class was at the Keystone Nationals. I misspoke. At the Iron City Nationals, where they just kind of took whatever they could off of the road, and it wasn't necessarily tailored around the Demolition Derby effectiveness of the car, but just an opportunity to wreck something that was a little bit more obscure. So by branching into that 102.5, it started opening things up. Like the pre-94 Civics are available, but at the same time you can run, I think a Mini Cooper fits in that. It was on the list. The Accent, like we said, but the Chevette from back in the day.
Rio 5, Toyota Echo, Yaris's, Honda Fits, Mazda 2s, smart cars, Fox body Mustangs, 4-cylinder Camaros, which are pretty hard to come by up here.
Right.
Mazda Proteges, Torcels, Tempos, VW Jettas, Golf, Beetles, Chevy Sparks, Aveos. Like, there's quite a bit of cars that fall into this. And I just ran a Mini Cooper the other day, and I was actually very, very impressed with it. I did get DQ'd because of a fire. I may have sold the dipstick out of the car and completely forgot about it, but yeah, it was definitely an eye-opening experience. Mini Cooper, I kind of thought it was going to fold in half, but that back end never even moved an inch.
The Dodge Colt on the list here, is that weird boxy thing when they were aligned with Mitsubishi from the 80s? Is that the Colt that we're talking about?
I believe so, but yeah. I've actually never seen one on the road.
No?
So, no. A lot of cars on this list, it's been quite a bit of years since I've even seen like a Firefly or a Geo Metro.
Right. It's
been quite a while since I've seen those. I haven't even seen a Tempo in probably 5 years on our roads.
Yeah. The Fox body Mustang, I'm sure everybody's ears pricked up when they saw that. It does have to be a 3 or 4 cylinder car, but it feels like that rear wheel drive Fox body is going to in a Pinto is going to be something that people are clamoring for the opportunity to run. Being that they're so rare, I don't know if they're necessarily going to have the same advantage as they would otherwise, because if there's only one that shows up, the likelihood is that everybody else is going to see that and try to take it out first.
Well, I think with the rules that you can't shorten the frame and you can run any bumper, even if they run like a 70s Monte Carlo bumper on it, they're not going to have the speed and the factory rear end, like these mini cars in a small, tight track, and they can pick up speed where these rear-wheel drives can't. Like, it'd be different if you could run like a Dana 60 shortened or one of those Moser rear ends I see at Blizzard Bash, but the rear ends can't keep up to these mini cars smashing on the back of it, and that's why the W bodies were being so successful in the full size, because I actually watched one demolition derby where this guy named Josh Archibald must have smacked 10 Crown Vic rear ends off in one round.
Can you imagine that? Oh, that had to feel really good as a driver.
You know what? He is a fantastic driver, and he can wheel those cars around. I've been in the ring with him. I've beat him in a Camry, and him in a Camry. But when he's in a W body, I've never once beat him. That's
awesome. The other one that jumped off the page is you're rattling off that list, and I mean, I don't think I remember ever seeing a Mazda 2 ever get run before, but the VW Beetle, those things can be straight nasty.
I agree with that. I actually ran against the VW Beetle 2 years ago, and I don't know if anybody knows this, but the rear bumper shocks on a VW Beetle are almost 15 inches long, so they're pretty intense in the back of it. A Mazda 2 actually showed up at an endurance race last year, and it was very, very small, but it looked pretty stout when it was all smashed up from the endurance race.
I am bummed that a PT Cruiser is 103 inches.
Yes, and that was kind of intentional just because PT Cruisers, if there is no Camry up here, the PT Cruisers do very well, and there's been guys up here that have got PT Cruisers actually nailed down pretty good. Mm-hmm. But it also cuts out neons as well. But
sure.
When the Camrys are in the ring, the PT Cruisers they do good, they really do, but the Camrys just overpower pretty much everything in mini class up here.
This is exclusive to cars, right? There's no minivans that are going to be creeping in?
No, unfortunately, I don't even know any minivans that fall under the 102 wheelbase.
No, I'm just looking long term with the way that things are getting changed up and getting evolved and things like that. There's nothing that's going to be. Is there anything forthcoming in the future if this takes off that you're going to be able to try and limit the engine displacement and use these rules to try and get the vans to evolve as well? Get some of the other oddball stuff included in that?
For Mums Motorsports, the minivans and the trucks actually run together. We allow 1500 series trucks, so like no 2500s or 8-bolt rear axle. It's just 6-bolt, 5-bolt trucks, any motor you want, any rear end you want, and the minivans and the trucks run together, and it actually turns out really good. We've ran it like that for 4 times, and right now it's at a deadlock. Vans have won twice, and trucks have won twice.
That's kind of like what some of the truck stuff is around here. You'll get some of the bigger Suburbans and stuff, but generally you see all that stuff running together. So Facebook is getting pretty busy. John Thomas is checking in. He was able to make it for the start, so that's always cool. Scott Kiefer, always good to see him. Ryan Devroy with Pure Michigan, he's checking in as well. Alex Vasco, Jeffy Schumann. Checking in. Scott Kiefer's talking about the mini cars and how the selection changes over time. A small car is taking over, but they're getting harder to find and getting expensive. It's the same conversation that Demolition Derby has had all the time. We haven't figured out what the hot new car is because we've still got this particular car in front of us. But if you look at the evolution of the big cars with the Imperials and then the Y-framers, and then we got into the Rivieras and the 2 and the 4 doors, and the roundback seemed to be the hot ticket, and things just continue to evolve over and over until now we're at the point where we've moved past the Malibus and moved past the Rivieras, and now we're talking about Crown Vics almost front to back. And now the next thing that's moving along for full size, the metric stuff. The metric GMs are starting to work pretty well. Connie Rosno with the metric Cadillacs, and we saw Derek Kreitla with a 90s Cadillac out there at Blizzard Bash running in the mod class. So we don't know what the next hot car is going to be because we haven't had to go find it yet. And that's kind of where we're at with this situation up there in Ontario, and just like any place else that's in the Northeast for that matter. is necessity breeds innovation. If you don't want to shell out $1,200 for a Crown Vic, or if you can't put your hands on a W body, you got to find a way for the sport to evolve. And then we get the innovation of this and coming back sort of to some of these compact micro routes that were so popular up there in Ontario for so long. And now you've got an opportunity to run. If 6 cars show up on June the 11th, it's a guaranteed $1,000. And I think I saw with the payout for the course of the day there was something like a $5,600 purse.
Yeah, we're planning to pay out, it's about $1,800 for Mini. Figure 8 is 100% payback, and the drivers only pay $50. So all the Figure 8 guys, they show up, they pay us $50. If we have 20 of them show up, that's $1,000 payout right back to the drivers. The full size, it's going to be rear-wheel drives and front-wheel drives. If they show up, they can run together. The truck and van, one of the promoters 2 years ago wanted to do a Farmer's Fresh, which is a bone stock 70s class, and he was willing to put up $2,600 for that class, and he hasn't come forth this year to do it again. But if we have that, we'll have the bone stock 70s for $2,600, 15 to win, and the rest going to second and third.
That's awesome. I see Frankie Guys checking in. Frankie's got a busy season getting ready to kick off here in a couple weeks with their first event, Hardcore Controlled Chaos on the Unified Point Series. We'll get into that in a little bit here. Christy Germain, thanks for joining the crew. It's all about the drivers. I like that. The Mini Cooper holds up well. Larry Sullivan, Scott Kiefer wants pointies on the front bumpers. That's pointies. Boy, I don't know. That seems like it's over the top. You're saying it was stock bumpers anyway, right?
Yeah, stock bumpers any year, apparently, is what the impact, if I read them correctly. So I do have a couple 77 New Yorker bumpers here that I might slide out to one of those impact shows with this year.
Somebody wants to put a 4-cylinder W body and go run the class, but they're too long. Rob Oswalt checking in as well, Nick Rose.
W bodies, I believe, are 107.1.
Yeah, it's a great idea, but the W body is not going to fit for the class that we're talking about specifically tonight. That'd be a little bit much.
As a joke, about 2 years ago, I threw a Camry subframe underneath an 03 and newer frame. No, none of my friends found that funny.
Wait, say that again now.
I threw a Camry subframe underneath an 03 Crown Vic.
Okay.
No, none of my friends found that funny because nowhere would let me run that here in Ontario.
How much work did that take?
It pretty much almost just went in. Just needed to make 4 little brackets.
Wow. See, that's like when you start hearing about the Imperial subframe getting stuffed up underneath the Crown Vics, and the phrasing is always the same as what you just used there when you were talking about putting the Camry up underneath it. You'd be surprised how well it fit. It was really close. It's like everything fits well if there's a torch and a welder, I suppose.
I remember a story a couple years ago about a rear-wheel drive Camry out there, and I've seen photos of it being derbied, and I've never seen anything like that before.
There was, I think there was a V8 W body or a V8 Malibu or something along those lines that showed up one time as well.
Yeah, there's now these Chevy SS's they're come with the 5.3 LS in them, and they're front wheel drive.
Well, that's what you're saying a second ago. Those rear wheel drives with the stock rear ends are not going to be able to hook up because they're at such a weight disadvantage. The front wheel drive cars, all that weight sitting over the front wheels, it makes them so much easier to spool up. And you know, we've traveled all over the place, and it's always the same thing. These gigantic tracks with just a little bit of traction and all the weight over those front wheels, they get flying around like crazy. Blizzard Bash indoors. We've been out to see the compacts run in Salt Lake City out in Utah, up at the frozen grounds of Winter Slam, when the compacts get flying around. And the compacts then, they're early in the card. They're one of the first first events on the track, so everything's still hard packed. You haven't got any of the coolant laid down, starting to slime up the track or anything. So those guys are getting grip on that ice and just flying all over the place. You know, Bash for Cash, for that matter, is the same way. You get all that front wheel drive mass and get them going in a straight line, they can do some damage.
I agree. The thing around here is a lot of these tracks are very, very small compared to the tracks that you just listed. Like, yes, we do have a couple big tracks down here and up here in Ontario, but most of these tracks are dirt, like grass tracks that they wet down, and a lot of these rear-wheel drives can't get any traction. And these, like, most of the front-wheel drives we're not allowed to change trailing arms. We're not allowed to change rear ends in a lot of these stock classes. And as soon as you do anything, like even a spindle swap on a Cobalt, if you take out the aluminum spindles up until this year and put Cavalier spindles in it to make the car competitive, that's now considered pro stock.
I just want to break down that sentence one more time. If you take the aluminum spindles off a Cobalt and put Cavalier spindles on it, it makes the car a pro stock.
That's our rules up here, because as soon as you start changing suspension in any way, they can now consider that not a stock car.
Right. I understand. Just the argument doesn't exactly pair side by side with the Ford stamped NHRA brake rotors that showed up one time, because again, you're messing with the suspension rules, because the oversized Ford part number stamped NHRA brake rotor fills the inside of a wheel better, so it's tougher to collapse a rim at Blizzard Bash. And it's a similar argument that is keeping you from running a Cobalt with Cavalier parts, and it's just such a jarring juxtaposition between the same argument and the same ultimate outcome with the car not being able to run because it had been overly modified. But you put it side by side with a car at Blizzard Bash with a Cobalt being run in Ontario. It's just interesting to see how Demolition Derby at times can be very different yet very the same.
Exactly. And you know what? It's all in how people interpret the rules. I was once told by a famous guy that the rules don't tell you what you can do. They tell you what you can't do. The harder you squint at them, the more you see. But I've been learning from the promoters up here, the other promoters up here in Ontario, that I have to stop reading the gray. But I have fun doing that and pushing it, because that's where you find out new things. Like I ran a HHR. I put Cavalier spindles in it, Cavalier strut, and I ran it 4 times, and I enjoyed running that car. I found it actually pretty competitive against other cars. I actually pulled out a win in it.
A couple different things. Scott Kiefer's hanging out, and this is something we've got Scott's attention at this point. Mitchell Cook, I believe it was Mitchell Cook. Let me scroll back up. Mitchell Cook, looking forward to running this class in June. Riley Bertrand is going to cut the back off the Camry and bring that up. The rule changes let the drivers.
I know Riley.
The rule changes let the drivers build them to the top. It's brought some cars out of the woods that normally would not run, and most cars build top notch. Let people run cars that just fold in one hit. Not today. I probably should have proofread that a little bit more before I tried to rip through it. But anyway, I get what he's saying, and that's kind of what we were saying at the get-go by putting the 102.5 inch rule limit in. It lets you run cars that you wouldn't have seen otherwise that might still be around, and they're still going to be competitive. And I get the logic with the cars being rusty or stuff that's left over, with the way that our roads are, especially with cars that have been sitting for a while. If they didn't get gobbled up during the high scrap return days, then they've been sitting for a long time, and they're probably not the best, and those cars weren't exactly the built with the same sitting around longevity as some of the 70s iron that we've seen. So you start putting those pieces together, you're going to get cars that are pretty crusty, and they're going to have holes, and you're going to be needing to get the okay to do repairs, or you just run it how it is, and they can explode in one hit, and there's just nothing that you can do to stop it. And you want to make sure the cars are going to be safe. So by opening things up to cars that are newer built, that are only recently off the road here within the last 5-6 years, it's helping increase that ability to be safe, to get everybody back to work on Monday after the derbies are over with. And it's also going to make things affordable again, because people aren't necessarily looking at those cars as being the go-to derby cars that you might expect from cars that were built in the 90s and 2000s, with our focus being on that compact and mini division.
I agree 100%. And, I'm just trying to make it so that more people can get out and do the Demolition Derby. For example, I ran a Camaro with a Ford 2.3 in it a couple years ago, and I actually ran it mini, and it was pro because I did a motor swap to it, and it had absolutely no floors in it. And within 2-3 hits, the car bent right at my feet, and the nose was higher than the roof, and it was a T-top, and it looked like a Jeep windshield because the pillars were almost perfectly straight up and down in the front. Nothing lasts up here.
No. We've seen a bunch of shows where the speaker deck is very, very close to touching the driver's headrest or their helmet, and the the gas tank protector is the only thing keeping the back end from collapsing entirely around the driver. So that's it's always entertaining to see, but you also got to keep in mind the safety aspect of it. Tommy Woodbury from up in Vermont with DNA Motorsports. His wife won Queen's Clash at the San Filippo show the year before COVID hit in a Cobalt with Cavalier parts. So that's it's another one of your pro stock cars doing well. That was at the San Filippo show over in Morris.
I have videos on my YouTube channel on how to put Cavalier parts in your Cobalt. It's all stock parts. There's no aftermarket. You only have to drill 3 holes for the top of the strut, and you have to drill 1 hole for a ball joint. So as far as I'm concerned, it's not even really modifying the car. You use the factory tie rods and everything. They just pretty much just bolt right into the car, and it makes a car that is not competitive with aluminum spindles into a car that is actually now can be a very winning car, and that gentleman just proved it at San Flamingo.
Right. What's your background? How did you get into Demolition Derby?
My father hates cars, and at 15 years old, I bought a car, had no driver's license, and wrapped it around a tree, and then I fell in love.
So did you have? I'm just trying to understand where this is going. Did you have support going into Demolition Derby, or was your dad like, "No, get it all out of here"?
No, my father does not even. He comes to the odd show, but my family has no idea why I like Demolition Derbies. I started doing four-wheel drive pickups for a while, and then one of my buddies asked me to do a Demolition Derby with him, so we both went out and bought Cavaliers. I built mine. He didn't build his. And I went to a show, and some guy I remembered from high school was there. I hit him into the wall at about 40 kilometers an hour, just destroyed my Cavalier in one shot, and said, that was fun, I want to do that again.
and this, so that morphed into Zach's workshop, and putting together simplified wiring harnesses and simplified wiring harness, and trying to help the drivers up there make the ease of build, something that they can enjoy.
I went down to Mini Meltdown, one of Jeffy's shows, and that was probably the second show I'd ever ran in the U.S., and I went down there, and I seen so many Toyota Camrys, and almost every single Toyota Camry had a standalone harness in it that looked like the ones that I gave away for free online, that I spent the time and pinned it out myself, and I was actually amazed with how many Toyota Camrys were running my harness, and I was happy, very happy about that.
We got to take a quick break. I just took a peek. We're running at the bottom of the hour right now. I just had a comment here on the YouTube side of things. SR71 Blackbird, that is kind of Loveland checking in. When his Civic burns up, he used some more eloquent language. When his Civic burns up, he wants to take it to a demo or an enduro. So pushing the limits has been part of motorsports forever. If you're not pushing the limits, you're not trying. So how about that? That's some wise words.
Great words.
Wise words from Kyle. Hope everything's going well. We got to take a quick break. We're going to be back here in just a minute. We'll have more with Zack McCormack. We'll tell you a little bit about what's coming up for the Unified Point Series, RPM Group, Smith Metalworks Expo, and all that. But before that, we want to tell you about Jeffy's Fab Farm. We'll be right back.
Jeffy's Fab Farm in Fredericksburg, Virginia specializes in all of your Demolition Derby needs. We've got you covered from bumper to bumper. Whether you need headers, shifters, harnesses, fueling systems, or complete turnkey setups, Jeffy'sFabFarm.com can help. We've even got a Canadian branch to help our northern customers. With over 16 years in the industry, we've got the knowledge and experience needed to provide the highest quality parts and put you in the winner's circle. Visit our website today or call Jeff at 540-907-3390. Fabby says the best parts come from the farm. Jeffy'sFabFarm.com.
And the Bash for Cash this year is going to be one of the places you can catch up with Jeffy and Jeffy's Fab Farm. Bash for Cash 2022 is going to be at the Ross County Fairgrounds in Chillicothe, Ohio. 3-man team pro stock, $15,000 to win. Turn back the clock class, $12,000 to win. Smash It Minis, $10,000 to win. $2,000 to win standalone features for the Smash It full size, street stock mini cars, street stock full size, pro stock mini, youth mini, SMW youth full size, street stock minivan truck, and SUV class. Frank the Tank, the popular Frank the Tank class, the relic cars, and the farm trucks, all part of the program. May the 27th is the kickoff Friday night. Pro stock team heats and the Smith Metal Works Youth full size division, 7 o'clock start time there. And then we go through qualifying Saturday, May the 28th, is Turn Back the Clock Heats, Pro Stock Team Consta, Youth Mini, Street Stock Mini, Van, Mini Truck, and SUV. The Street Stock full-size feature goes off that night. Frank the Tank Class and the Smash It Minis, all part of Saturday's program. May the 29th, Championship Sunday. The Farm Trucks, the Street Stock Minis, the Relic Cars, the Pro Stock Minis, Smash It full-size, the Pro Stock Team feature, and the Turn Back the Clock feature set the stage for Championship Sunday, May 27th through the 29th, 2022. Ross County Fairgrounds, Chillicothe, Ohio. Online, smashitderby.com. Unified Point Series had the weekend off. They are all driving towards the next event on the calendar. We saw the Undertaker car was unveiled. TJ's been working on all sorts of stuff. Dead Man's No Mercy 2 is coming up April 15th and 16th in Dunbar, Pennsylvania. So we got about 2 weeks left before that one, and then that kicks off 3 weeks of busy Derby action right in a row. April the 22nd and 23rd is Derby Icon Spring Explosion in Champaign, Illinois. April the 30th is Hardcore's Compact Throwdown in Stoneboro, Pennsylvania. May the 14th is Hardcore's Controlled Chaos in Knox, Pennsylvania. And then Smash It has been added to the schedule, or we missed it. I'm not sure what happened there, but May the 27th through the 29th is the Bash for Cash as part of the Point Series, and then June 11th, TNT's Wexford Warzone in Cadillac, Michigan. Currently, Ty Richards, 40 points to his credit. He's leading. Trevor Jones trying to run him down. He's 11 points behind with 29 markers. Don Santel has jumped up to third with 23. Tied for fourth, Cody Klemke and Dylan Simonson, 22 points. Bill Miller is in sixth with 21 points. Corey Buddy, 16 points. In seventh, you can stay up to date online. 527unifiedseries.com. RPM Group, want to take a minute to tell you about the RPM Group, Progressive Waste Management Company based in Owego. RPM Group started in 2016 and now boasts 2 roll-offs and 6 garbage trucks. Fully certified and licensed, the RPM Group customer base has grown to it's approaching 4,000 people at this point, offering curbside trash and recycling services in addition to asbestos abatement, asbestos surveys, interior and exterior demolition, lead renovation, mold remediation, mold assessment, and dumpster rental. RPMGroupNY.com is the website. Call 607-223-8714. Tell them that you heard about them on Crash Course for all of your trash removal needs. And rounding things out here, the Smith Metalworks Demolition Derby Expo is April 8th and 9th in Mercer, Pennsylvania. It's the debut of the new facility. They've added all sorts of seminars this year. There's going to be a collaborative rules meeting in addition to all the vendors. The whole list has been posted on smithmetalworks.info. That's WORKS.info. All of that is out there. There's going to be a derby event. I saw some pictures of some of the cars that are going to be running down there during that over the course of the weekend. Saw some decals from Mason Stacy. Mason Stacy is going to be driving the Crash Course car down there. Tons of cool stuff coming, and there's even more stuff that's still in the work. Make sure you check them out online, smithmetalworks.info. And then if you need more information on the Expo event on the social media feeds, facebook.com/smithmetalworks, WORX, for additional details. And make sure you check them out. And then we've got a little bit of information from Alex Vasco, and we will be back with to finish up this episode in just a minute.
Where'd you go?
We did the derby.
Ow, my head! You went to a derby?
Hey Derby World, this is All For Him Racing Videos, where Derby never ends. We have people come up and ask, what is All For Him Racing Videos? And the answer is a YouTube channel dedicated to growing the sport of demolition derby in a positive and fun way. Our passion is to show the next generation this sport and capture the memories for generations to come. We're just trying to show that you can be a Christian, do crazy and exciting things like demolition derby, and just spread the word. We have traveled all over the country filming events, all while meeting many great people, hearing amazing stories, seeing the passion for this sport, and falling in love with the derby community. We have grown to be the largest demolition derby channel on YouTube across the world, with millions of views within our large library of videos. We love what we do and can't wait for what the future has in store. We always want to be a place for positive, exciting, and action-packed derby videos. Thank you, Derby World, and enjoy the videos.
And that was a little bit about Alex Vasco and All For Him Racing. Zack McCormack still in the line. I don't know if you caught that right there at the end for everybody that's tuning in and watching at home. There was a clip of a couple compacts there at the end of that highlight reel from All For Him Racing, and a couple of those cars still had the windshield in the car. That's something that's still a common thing up there in New England, Massachusetts, Maine, those derbies up there. They still have the front windshield in it. There's Franklin County Fair in Malone. Also, periodically you'll see cars coming out with a windshield still in the compact class. Do you guys make that mandatory with your events up there?
For figure eight, you can leave the windshield, and for the mini smash, because I have to follow the other company's rules, you have to take it out. I actually messaged the promoter with the Mini Cooper because I wanted to put zero effort into the car pretty much, and he told me I did have to take it out, so I had to remove it.
Alan Marion says finding Cavalier parts for Cobalts is getting more and more difficult around here, but I guess that's probably the case with everybody, right?
I have about 15 sets on a shelf.
Don't give them away.
I got sets for all the aluminum spindle W bodies, the newer ones. I got the Cavalier spindles on shelves. I maybe have about 32 to 35 Camry Solaris Avalons left, but they're getting to be tough pickings up here.
So we talked a little bit about how you got into Demolition Derby and the necessity. Wow, that was a tough one. The necessity of getting a class like this, a little bit of a rejuvenated hope to take flight. But I saw there was a guaranteed $1,000, and it's guaranteed based off of only 6 cars. I mean, is it something that you think that the turnout's going to be that low as you get this thing back up on its feet? I mean, it seems to me, just in the general momentum and discussion, that you're going to have, I don't know if it's going to get to the point where you have more cars than you know what to do with, but I think you're going to have quite a good turnout for this one on the 11th.
I really hope so. The $1,000 is just money I'm putting up.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the promoters have, due to the inflation here in Canada, I think a lot of the promoters have actually raised their entry fees up to $75 and $100.
Mm-hmm.
I'm keeping mine at $50, so it's only costing the drivers $50 to run, and I'm putting $1,000 out of my own pocket to get this class up and running, and I really hope it takes off. If we have 15, 20 drivers show up, I'll even raise the prize money. Because I'm not in this to make money. I'm in this to get the sport growing. That's one of the main things with my YouTube channel, is trying to get as many new people into the sport as I can, because without new people, the sport's not going to grow.
Sure.
And it's just going to die off, and I don't want that.
No, and I don't think anybody does. But on the flip side of things, I think that there's ways that we can give the sport a future. I mean, you think way back to 2004, 2005, people writing their epitaph for Demolition Derby, all the memorials were being authored as the old iron was getting harder and harder to find, but then innovation has led us to the point where we're at, and I think this is just going to be another one of those evolutions. I'm hoping that the guys out in Dunkirk and the parts of Western New York that love to just go destroy stuff are paying attention. They've got some opportunities, a lot of good opportunities to go run up in Canada and get that back and forth flowing. We've got a lot of drivers from Canada that come down, especially with the attendance that we see at the Bash for Cash. It'd be awesome to see some of those drivers go up north and take a swing at things up there. On the topic of things that are going up north, we've got a couple other discussions that are forthcoming for future promotions. July 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, Billy Bash, 3 Days of Destruction. Ron McClung has been inquiring about some feature time on the show, so we've been looking at that. There's been a 70s wire class that's added to that, the Billy Bash event, and then also we were talking with Frankie Guy, and he's talking about doing the same program as what he had last year. So we'll be featuring the results and the names of the results and the schedule for hardcore once we actually once I get that email back. I just realized that we've been talking about it, and I didn't know if we were actually moving forward with that or not. I should probably email Frankie. He's probably watching right now. He's had plenty of stuff going on, so it's not like that's the most important thing going on Earth either. So hopefully Frankie's health is trending in the right direction, and everybody's going to be back on their feet soon, because his derby season is going to be starting right quickly here next month, and we want to make sure that he's there to enjoy all of it. So hopefully those changes have worked, and he's going to be doing well. Where do we go from here? How can people find out more besides Zach's workshop, or is Zach's workshop on Facebook. Is that the hub for all the information revolving around the Mom's Motorsports event in Caledon, Ontario?
Mom's Motorsports actually has its own Facebook page where we have our rules. But for the new mini rules, we haven't got them posted yet because we are using impact rules. But one of the big pages up here in Canada is 519 Derby cars. And a lot of the people that are in there are actually, we make a list of pretty much every show that is in Ontario with the dates and who the promoters are. And it used to be done by a guy named Devin Olson, but now a new guy, Nick Wolf, he's been making the list, and I think it helps out a lot of drivers. The 519 Derby page is where a lot of the actual drivers go to find out where the shows are and who's promoting them.
Sure. That's one of the things that I think that Facebook has taken the place of, and maybe not exactly serviced the sport as much as We Crash used to. With all the state representatives that used to compile all the shows, I mean, there was tons and tons of derbies that were listed that I didn't know about in New York and in Pennsylvania. And you have everybody sort of fractioned off, and there's a lot of good information shared around the Northeast pages, but there's so many different pages because somebody wants to have their slice of ownership, their duty and responsibility, their ability to give back. So instead of having We Crash and having state representatives posting and contributing to a dedicated state thread or a thread dedicated to Ontario or whatever it might be. Now we've got this person's putting together this list, but it might not be complete. And then you've got the Northeast page, and then you've got Northeast Demolition Derby drivers, and you've got all these different places where you can find generally the same information. But on those off chances that one piece is missing here and there, it's not quite the same as the one-stop shop that We Crash used to offer. And that is one of the things that I kind of miss about that. We Crash is still out there, and I'm sure that there's still the information. But I'll be honest, I haven't been to a We Crash page in a long, long time.
Well, from a guy that used to spend hours upon hours on We Crash, reading all the Volvo threads, because I used to do the 240s, and then I got into these Mazdas, and then I got into the Toyotas, and at one point, I was running the Mazda on We Crash, and I used to spend hours on there, and like I said, I don't think I've been on the We Crash page in almost 5 years just because of how many different pages are on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I mean, I'm glad that that's continuing on. I saw some pages, I saw some posts looking for information, looking to fill out that schedule, which is always good. I am not sure what's happening with our Facebook thread, so I am trying to find out what Brandon Wardell is trying to convey to us. Are you playing Wreckfest right now while we're talking? Zach, are you playing Wreckfest while we're talking?
No, I'm sitting in my basement watching you guys on your the fingerlakes1.com
okay.
page.
All right. Well, it seems that. Do you know Brandon Wardell?
I'm horrible with names.
Okay, I don't know. I don't know what he's trying to say, but it's he's having a ball with it. Alan Marion.
I do have the Wreckfest game, but it's probably been a year since I've been on it.
maybe that's the case. Alan Marion, we're bringing people together. He's just north of Barrie, and he's going to come and grab them. And we're asking will Edge and Impact be running the new 102.5 class this season? So that's something that Christy, she's in the chat right now. She could answer for those guys. And Alan Marion, he's on his way with a handful of cash, ready to buy those parts for me.
I've been getting a whole bunch of messages saying that Toyota Corollas are going to take it because they're actually competitive in our mini class now for the small money tracks. And somebody's saying maybe I should do an extra bit of money if the Toyota doesn't win it. Like if a Honda wins, give an extra $500. Maybe I will have to do that because honestly, that under 102 list does have a lot of Toyotas in it. You're talking out of that whole list, there's probably 5 or 6 different little Toyotas on that list. But I'd like to see something else win. And that's coming from me, the guy that's only been running Toyotas for the last pretty much 4 years.
Well, I hope that we haven't muddied the water. I'm keeping an eye on the clock here. We're about 10 minutes from the conclusion. I hope we haven't muddied the water by talking about the differences with the W bodies and the differences with the pro stocks and changing around things with the Cobalts and the Cavaliers. The full list of cars is eventually going to be posted. It's been expanded to 102.5 inches for June the 11th. Mums Motorsports in Caledon, Ohio, guaranteed $1,000 for this class, bringing things back a little bit to the roots of things, so to say, where the compact stuff really got to start up there in Ontario. And I think it's a great move. You're going to be able to get some really, really interesting cars, some really unique builds, and who knows what you might hit on having these 3 and 4 cylinder car combinations with a wheelbase limit that you've got with the pre-94 Civics, the Mini Coopers like you were talking about, the Volkswagen Beetles. It's going to be something very, very interesting to see as this continues to develop and takes on a new life.
I think that we both skipped over one of these cars on the list that I want to see run. I actually purchased one of these cars 3.5, 4 years ago, and nobody in Ontario would let me run it.
Okay.
And if one of them show up for my show, they're going to have special rules because they have to have a full cage around the driver. I mean, passenger door bar and driver door bar. That is a smart car.
Right. So
I would love to see a smart car. I bought one, and nobody in Ontario would let me run it. But there's also cars on here that are not listed, like a Toyota MR2, a Pontiac Ferrero. I don't care if the car is rear engine. It just has to fit underneath the 102.5, and it has to be 4-cylinder.
Were some of those cars that you were listing off? Some of those were all electric, aren't they?
I think the smart car comes in diesel and gas.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's electric.
Oh, okay. I think I
maybe
saw.
the newer ones are.
I thought I saw a Yaris on there. I don't know if that was electric or the Chevy Spark. If that was.
The Chevy Spark is non-electric, and the Yaris comes with a 1.5 liter. It's the same motor that comes inside the Echo. Right. And I off-road raced the Toyota Echo last year, but I cut the roof off in the trunk, and I turned it into a Trucko. And nobody could catch it. It was so light that nobody could catch it.
I was just, in the back of my mind, I'm worrying about the crew being prepared for any of the challenges that come with those all-electric vehicles. I know Jason Sauer was making some phone calls about running an all-electric vehicle at the Stoneboro Fair. It got to the point where the manufacturer wouldn't even return his phone calls. So I'm glad that I don't know enough about those cars to make that mistake, and that everybody's going to be safe, because it just blows my mind. He was scared to death of being electrocuted because he got hit in the back corner or something, because basically the whole floor was a battery. He's a little crazy anyway. So I mean, I digress, but I just think it's so cool. I mean, I had an Echo as a rental car a million years ago, and it was like driving a roller skate. The thing was as big as a cell phone.
They're tiny. I seen somebody ran a Toyota Prius a couple years ago. I don't know if they kept the hybrid battery in it or not, but it looked like he had an unbelievable amount of fun time in it. But honestly, I would love to see where this goes. And how I word it as is, everybody thought when the 70s cars were disappearing that Demolition Derby was going to be over. And then all of a sudden, the 80s Crown Vics and the metric cars started coming alive. And then when everything started switching to fuel injection, everybody thought the cars were going to die. And then all of a sudden, now you start seeing how people are converting fuel injection to carbureted, and it brought a whole new life to it. You're tuning the ECM. Jesse with his EFI Live, Jerb Shop with his LS stuff. All these guys are changing the sport in ways that nobody ever thought of would be done 5-6 years. Well, maybe not that long ago, maybe 10 years ago. But now we got to find the next innovation, and you know what? It's down to basically promoters in Ontario, U.S., every state to try to find what's going to bring the next life. Like the 03 Newers, nobody knew how strong those things were going to be. If you brought an 03 Newer to any show in Ontario, you had a completely different set of rules than any other cars.
Mitchell Cook says he wants a free entry if he brings a smart car.
If you bring a smart car, you have to contact me, Mitch Cook. I know you have my personal phone number, so I need to talk to you about cage. And maybe if you put Zach's workshop on it, we can come up with something.
Need a box around the battery. Lithium cells are pretty flammable. That's Steven Sanders. Tommy Woodbury, he's driven a lot of these oddball cars at some of the events that he was competing in up there, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts. He had an 80 Tercel hatch. That was a pretty hard car. And I believe that fits.
You know what? I've seen one of those 80s Tercel hatches go, and I haven't seen one of those in probably 7 years. They're a pretty weird setup. the motor's mounted just like your rear-wheel drive cars, but then it's got like a transfer case that comes to the front axle. So it's a completely different kind of car than almost any other compact out there. It's a different one, that's for sure.
Awesome. Is there anything else that you wanted to hit on that maybe we've missed?
No, to be honest, guys, I had a great time talking to you. If you guys need to get a hold of me, you can get on through Zach's Workshop on Facebook or send me a message on YouTube, and or contact me through Mom's Motorsports Facebook page. And I try to message everybody back as fast as I can. I probably get 100 Camry messages a day on why my car won't start, so I'm pretty good at messaging people back.
I'm excited to see some of the other stuff that I remember just from my favorite reflecting days of looking back at Mopars and awful cars of the 80s, the Omni and the Omni GLH. One of the guys that I used to work with, he used to have an Omni, and he was telling me all these horror stories about how the thing was a very, very challenging vehicle to drive, but it was fast as all get out. And the Chevette, I remember seeing Chevettes, and when I used to have a paper route, there's a guy up around the corner from where we lived that every time he bought cars, it was 2 cars at the same time. And for a while, he had 2 gold Chevettes. And then after he got rid of those, he ended up with a couple identical blue Citations after that. It's just really neat that this is coming forward and something new is coming down the line to change Demolition Derby again. And like we said, one of these things might end up being so hard that if you do the right changes to it, it's going to be people are going to be clamoring for them to run in the regular compact classes too. We just don't know. It's going to be really cool to see.
Well, if you guys are interested, the aftermath of my Mini Cooper will be posted Wednesday morning on Zach's Workshop. I have in-car footage of it, and if I wasn't DQ'd for the fire, I was in feature. But because I got DQ'd for the fire, I couldn't make it to feature. There was no consolation. And my wife, I think I'm going to let her drive it at this 102 and under show, and if she wins, I'm going to make it so that the money goes down to second place, because my wife doesn't need to bring home my money.
Oh, man. I'm watching the chat, make sure we didn't miss anything over there. Scott Kiefer checking out. Hopefully had a good week. Scott had the celebration of life for his wife passing away there, so it looked like they had a pretty good service. And Beat On Boys Racing 173, I'm going to come and take your free money. Thanks. Great talking, Zach. So got some more fans on the YouTube feed as well. Just checking everything over. Looks like we're in a pretty good spot to start wrapping things up for this one, 394. Coming up in the books as we hit the top of the hour. Thanks so much for everybody tuning in and hanging out. Zach, man, keep it up to date. Keep in touch, if you would, please, as things evolve and things keep going on. It'd be awesome to know more about your entries and how the attention and the interest grows with this. Just out of my own curiosity, we frequently talk about the compacts not getting the respect that they need to, and they're a support class, and they don't, even though they bring the most cars, they don't get paid the most money. And this is certainly a jump even further than that into these micro cars, these mini cars having a life of their own. It's going to be interesting to see as this moves forward.
See, up here in Ontario, I think that's almost completely backwards. At 90% of our shows, compacts are the last class to run because there's the most cars in compacts. Back when Greg Johnson owned Impact Motorsports, he had Fall Brawl, which he gave away $10,000 for compact class, which that's the highest show I've ever seen in Ontario for anything. You have Jason Dixon down at Dresden that gives away $5,000 for mini shows, and $10,000, I think he did one of those as well. But even the Germains, like the minis, outnumber the full size probably 2 to 1, if not at a higher rate.
Right. It's great to see. And those drivers that are building those cars, they deserve the same respect as anybody else does.
Oh, the compact guys are crazy. Like,
yes.
There was one show last year where one compact guy entered the ring full speed. I bet you he hit 60 kilometers an hour, missed everybody, and smoked the blocks.
I remember seeing that clip.
Like up here, like some guys are just crazy, and it's awesome to be in the ring with them. I love shaking people's hands afterwards, and I think that a little bit of respect for drivers doing everything, like because you can run any type of car, but I ran rear-wheel drives for 5 years, and I thought they were good, but as soon as I got behind the wheel of a compact, I couldn't go back.
hopefully they bring all that fury and aggression to the show on the 11th.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to be funnier with these minis, watching them smash or watching the drivers get in and out of the cars.
It's going to be easier to get out than it is getting in.
Yeah.
I've already got
I think so, too.
I think it was Rob Sutton. Let me see if I can find it quick. See what the... Oh, man. 2-fire rule. Larry Sullivan checking in. The turnouts are huge at the impact.
I'm not going to DQ you for one fire. If it's a gas fire, you'll be DQ'd. Like, I'm talking like 4-foot flames out of your hood. But if it's just your radiator fan and your exhaust, we'll put the fire out and you guys can keep going. But only one time we'll do that.
Rob Sitton, 102.5-inch Outlaw class.
Yeah. I'd love to see a smart car with a full gas tank protector that goes over top of the engine.
Oh, man.
I believe it or not, when we were looking at Blizzard Bash rules, we were just me and my buddies were thinking about building a smart car because the door plate would go from the front bumper to the rear bumper.
There wouldn't be anything to bend.
Nothing to bend. It would just be a full bumper and the door bars all the way around it.
Right on. Well,
Be
like I
like a
said,
little soccer ball they just punt around the ring.
you'd end up in the 10th row.
No, yeah, I'd hit the nosebleed.
For sure. Well, man, this has been a lot of fun. I can't believe we ripped through that hour very, very fast. We appreciate you making some time and hanging out for a bit. Thanks to Chris Hansen for putting us in touch. I sure do appreciate that as well. And hopefully this turns into something big for you. Please, like I said, keep in touch. Let us know how things evolve, and look forward to catching up with you soon.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank Caledon for letting me try to do what I want with the show because, you know what, the Caledon Fair Board has pretty much given me whatever they think that I think is good for the show can go. So that's why I'm trying to just do this just to make the fair better and make the drivers happy. And cars that are just getting out of control up here in Canada. So if you can afford something, come and smash it.
There you go. No more glorious a death for a car than to die on the track at a demolition derby.
Yeah, you just can't tell the old guys out here taking their way to the full frame Crown Vics or Cadillacs.
Well, you can't save them all.
No, gotta feel all the decals off the truck when you do that.
Right on. Well, man, once again, I appreciate it.
Have a great night.
All right, man. We'll see you later. Take care, Zach.
All right, bye.
There goes Zack McCormack. All done. We got to wrap things up here. Just a whisker over, so I guess it's not too bad. That is going to do it for us here on episode number 394. Appreciate everybody tuning in and hanging out with us for a little while. We will be back again next week with another episode of The Crash Course. We'll see you then.
The Crash Course Live is presented by
Smash It Demolition Derby, who host Bash for Cash, Blizzard Bash, and Capital City Carnage. Online at smashitderby.com. And Stirring Dirt Racing, hosts of Maymania's team show at the Golden Spike Arena in Ogden, Utah. Online at stirringdirtracing.com.
Reckless Abandon Derby Apparel and Derby Inc. Magazine. This is the Crash Course Demolition Derby podcast, recorded live at the FingerLakes1.com studios in downtown Seneca Falls, New York.